Okay, so when it comes to DC Comics, I feel like there's always that one hero I kind of always go back to when it comes to me when I sit down and read DC Comics, and usually that's Batman. But really for me, it's not Bruce Wayne that kind of pulls me back into the DC world. It's the characters around Batman, so like Tim Drake or Jason Todd or Damian Wayne, and of course, Dick Grayson. So I kind of want to go ahead and continue our coverage over Nightwing when he got his first solo series in the early 1990s. Now, we already covered the first two story arcs when it comes to our boy, but now we're going to dive into the third story arc where it's finally him meeting the Kingpin or the new Kingpin of Bludhaven. And let's not forget that when it came to Dick Grayson, the only reason why he came over to Bludhaven is because of Batman. You see, for Batman, he told Dick like, hey, listen, 21 dead bodies had just appeared in Gotham's River. All 21 dead bodies belong to a certain gang, and that gang leader is a guy known as Angel. The problem is that Angel had just disappeared by the time Dick Grayson got over to Bludhaven. So in the last couple story arcs, it has been Dick trying his best to locate Angel. Now, in our last video, we had learned that somebody had kidnapped Angel and they're currently keeping him as a prisoner as he writes down every single piece of information about his entire operation in Bludhaven. But we have no idea where Angel is currently at, like who's currently holding on to him. And for Dick, it's also him trying his best to find Angel. But as we dive into issue number 6, it's really more of us now seeing Dick Grayson work at this bar. Now, this bar is called Hogan's Alley, and we saw this bar in our last video, but this bar is a cop bar. So it allows Dick Grayson to kind of work there and be able to collect intel on different things happening in Bludhaven so that he can find different ways to bring justice into this city. Now, once you do have Dick being able to finish a long shift at that bar and being able to leave, he hears this voice that he knows very well. It belongs to his landlord, a woman known as Bridget Clancy. Now, for Dick, at first, he believed that she was an Irish woman because he never saw her face truly. Every single time he was around her to have a conversation, something was always blocking her face. But now he is able to put a face to that voice. It's a young Asian woman. Now, she was born in Hong Kong, but she was raised in Ireland. So, of course, that is why she has an Irish accent. But for Dick Grayson, he's kind of like, man, she's kind of cute. And now I have the ability to possibly build a relationship with her. But once you do have Dick Grayson being able to get back home for the day, he realized that somebody had broke into his apartment. Now, the first chapter we are covering is a team-up book. It's Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, the past Robin and the current Robin at this time in the 1990s working together. Now, Tim told Dick like, hey, I'm going to stop by after Bruce and I had handled things with the Titans. They did, and so now Tim is here. But for Dick, he believes the reason why Tim is here is to actually spy on him for Bruce Wayne. Because for Dick, he's been here for a few weeks, and honestly, nothing has improved in Bludhaven just yet, especially when it comes to the case that Dick came here to solve, the 21 dead bodies that belongs to Angel's gang. But Tim's like, no, I'm not here to spy for him. Technically, I'm here to just be with you. But really, it's kind of like Tim wanting to learn more things from Dick Grayson, because Dick was the first Robin, the first partner for Batman. But you do have our two heroes go over to the apartment that belongs to a character known as Maxwell Reed. Now, for Maxwell Reed, he is the lawyer to Angel, the current gangster or gang lord that is missing at the moment. And so in our last video, you had different characters go to Maxwell to kind of figure out where Angel could possibly be at. The problem is that for Maxwell, he had no idea. Now, in our last video, Dick saved him from a different character known as Lady Vic. And so because Dick did save him, it's Grayson saying like, hey, you owe me one right now. Like, you need to give me some kind of information that could possibly help me to locate your missing boss. And that would be a character known as Sonny Brewer. Now, for Sonny, he was the guy Angel called in to kind of handle some bets that he did on the side when it came to his business, to make sure that all the different bets kind of worked out for him. And so for Dick and also Tim, they find Sonny, and their main goal is kind of tell him to hopefully figure out where Angel could possibly be at. Now, the only reason why Maxwell told Dick that piece of information is because you had Grayson say, hey, I was sent here by Inspector Soames. Now, for Inspector Soames, he's this cop that Grayson has been working with. Not John Wick, working with. But you did have Dick tell Robin, like, I know that Soames is no Jim Gordon. And matter of fact, I believe that he is a crooked cop who works for the mob. Now, this kind of leads into a conversation between the two characters. Because for Tim Drake, he kind of feels like he's out of place in the Bat family. And let me explain, because for him, he's the current Robin, right? You already had Dick Grayson, who grew up, became Nightwing. You had Jason Todd, who's currently dead, and now here's Tim. But the first two Robins, they were kind of invited into the Bat family to become Robin. But for Tim, he wasn't truly invited. And technically, he had to work very hard to prove to Bruce Wayne that he could be the next Robin, his next partner. But as Tim also saying, like, Dick, you are very athletic, and I'm not. I'm that computer person. But the problem is, they have Oracle, who's already that computer person for the Bat family. So where does Tim belong at? Now, it's also him saying, like, I don't plan on being Robin for the next 10 years. Like, my goal is to do my shift and go back to my normal life. And that is it. But he also says, Dick, you don't realize you're just like Batman in so many different types of ways. And that is why you two don't get along very well. Now, let's not forget that for Maxwell, he's the reason why Dick knows about Sonny. And so you have Maxwell meeting up with, well, good old Inspector Soames, this crooked cop. And so you have Inspector kind of like, in what right mind would you believe I would send the vigilante Nightwing over to you? Because now you kind of ruined things for us. You made things harder for us. And so you have the inspector just go ahead and kill off Maxwell just like that. But getting back over to our heroes, you have our heroes realize that Sonny has not come out of the building that he went into earlier. And so for our heroes, they believe that things are about to go south very quickly. And so you have Tim say, you know what? Let me go ahead and place a bug on his car so that we're able to follow him. But Dick realized that this is a trap. Sonny has not come out of the building in 20 minutes, which means two things. One, he's most likely dead, or two, this is a setup. Somebody most likely had tipped him off. And we already know it is the second one. Inspector Soames most likely had tipped Sonny off saying, like, you're being followed by two vigilantes. And so by the time Tim got near Sonny's car, it blew up. And you have a bunch of guys out of nowhere begin to shoot at Tim. Now, luckily for Tim, Dick was there to help take those guys down and get Tim the heck out of there. But for Dick Grayson, that was a learning moment. But now we can kind of switch over to Angel, who's currently a prisoner. And the thing is, you have the person who has been holding on to Angel just go ahead and finally kill him off. And so now this person is trying to move into that position to allow him to become the Kingpin of Bludhaven. And so that kind of leads us into the next chapter where we're now seeing Dick going after different people who belong to Angel's gang, the important people who belongs to Angel's gang. And so with all these different people, once you do have Dick Grayson being able to take them down, it's him saying like, okay, cool, listen, so I brought you all here to kind of figure out where is your boss, because we all know that he's currently missing, and I kind of feel like you guys want to see him so badly. But one of the guys that Dick has captured tells him in a nice way, like, No, we don't, because technically our new boss is still bringing in money for everybody. That money is still flowing. So why in the world do we care so much about our missing boss where we're still able to make a whole bunch of money? And technically, the guy is right, but he does tell Dick this right here. You should go check out St. Anthony's, this church that's also a nursing home as well. And so you have Dick say fine. And when he goes over there, he kind of realized that this church is heavily guarded. Now for Grayson, he does not go in at all, but now kind of gives him the idea of like, okay, why is this church so well protected? Who's in there that could be very important that could lead me into the new Kingpin of Bludhaven? Now, the next page is really more of us finding out, the cops really finding out that Angel is dead. We already knew he was dead, but the cops are now finding the dead body of Angel. And so now they're kind of wondering like, okay, who is now officially moving into that role as the Kingpin of Bludhaven? And for the chief, he wants to know really badly. And word gets out very quickly because you have Dick working another shift at that bar. But while doing that, he overhears the cops saying like, hey, they found the dead body of Angel. And for Dick, he kind of feels like that he's somewhat responsible for what happened to Angel, or the whole idea of the shift happening with the whole new Kingpin coming into Bludhaven. Now, there is some bright things going on in Dick's life. Like, for example, he's now able to get a date with Bridget, kind of build that relationship between these two characters. So we are seeing some new things happen in the life of Dick Grayson while being in Bludhaven. But after all of that, you did have Dick Grayson get a somewhat call from Oracle. I say somewhat because it does seem like she was able to kind of just force her way onto his computer, but she does have some very important information for Dick, like the whole idea of who's currently being guarded inside that church. And she tells Dick that it's a woman named Joyce Elizabeth Desmond. And she is the mother to Roland Desmond, the second Blockbuster character in DC Comics. Now, there was another person who was technically Blockbuster, but he is dead by this point. But his brother had officially taken over. Now, for Roland Desmond, he was a very smart person at first, very intelligent, but like his brother, he began to take the steroids drug that gave him his super strength. The problem was that after taking the drugs, his intelligence began to go away. Now, luckily for Roland, he made a deal with a demon. And so with them doing that, he had regained his intelligence, but also kept his super strength. And so with that combination, he said, you know what? This is the best time for me to go ahead and become the Kingpin of Bludhaven. And so you have Dick call up Wally West to learn more about Blockbuster, to kind of see what kind of person he is at this point in time. And by this point, Wally had his own sidekick, Impulse. And Impulse had a few run-ins with Blockbuster. And Impulse told Wally, who's down telling Dick, like, hey, Blockbuster is completely different now. He's more violent, more brutal. Like, you need to be on guard if you go after him. And so you have Dick just being able to follow the paper trail. And with them following the paper trail, it led him right over to the brand new home of Blockbuster, where there he's been able to confront one of his old villains. Blockbuster is here now as the new Kingpin of Bludhaven. And so that kind of leads us into the next chapter where we're now seeing Nightwing fighting against Blockbuster. Like, this is establishing the whole idea that these two characters will do battle in this book or this series over and over again, because it's Nightwing trying to bring justice into Bludhaven. Now, while you have Nightwing trying to fight against Blockbuster, you do have Blockbuster kind of show that he's very strong, but not as fast as Nightwing. But the problem is Nightwing only dodge for a certain period of time before Blockbuster is able to get his hands on him, which he does. And so for a brief moment there, it does look like Grayson is going to die. Now, for me personally, I thought Wally West was going to come in and save the day at the very last second. But no, it's actually Inspector Soames. He tells Blockbuster like, hey, listen, if you kill off Nightwing, then most likely it's gonna bring in Batman, which then brings in more problems for us when it comes to us trying to take over Bludhaven. And so for Blockbuster, he realized that Inspector Soames is correct, but it's also him saying like, okay, I still need Nightwing dead, so let's try to kill him off, but in a way where it would not lead back to us at all, especially when it comes to Batman. And so once you have Dick Grayson wake up, he realized that he is completely surrounded by a bunch of bikers called the Loners. Now, these bikers, of course, they work for Blockbuster. The goal is, though, to have the Loners be the ones to kill off Dick Grayson. Then most likely Batman cannot trace it back over to Blockbuster. But of course, you do have our boy Nightwing being able to take these guys down very easily. But now it's also time for us to see another character who might play a somewhat important role in the whole idea of Bludhaven, because we do pick up with Dick Grayson running into somebody who is homeless, and you have Dick give that guy $50 to kind of begin the process of him trying to achieve a better life for himself. But the problem is that right after Dick walks away, that homeless person does get attacked by somebody else, and apparently this person hates the idea of low-life people in his area. His goal is to clean up his block. Now, we have no idea just yet who this character is, but don't worry, very soon he will play a somewhat important role in the whole idea of Nightwing and being in Bludhaven. But this storyline does kind of end on the note where you do have the Loners kind of head over to their boss, Blockbuster, to inform him like, hey, we had technically failed when it came to stopping Dick Grayson, stopping Nightwing. And so for Blockbuster, he does not like the idea of them failing. So you have him just go ahead and kill them all off just like that. And then once they are dead, he's now then able to move on with his day. And so now we're kind of left to wonder, what is next for our boy in Bludhaven, but also what can he do to hopefully stop Blockbuster? But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.